These 100 ChatGPT prompts are going to change how you learn languages forever. Every single time I've asked someone if they want to be fluent in another language, the answer is always a resounding yes. But then they tell me that they just haven't gotten around to it because it's too hard. Very few English speakers actually make it to that finish line and get fluent in another language. And it's not hard to see why. Many traditional language materials miss our interest entirely and come off as boring and irrelevant. I mean, how captivated are you really going to be about a 5-page monologue on ordering coffee at a cafe when you don't even drink coffee? Besides boring materials, my language friends always complain that it's hair-pullingly difficult to find people to practice speaking with. It's either they don't have people that speak the language around them, they're too nervous and don't want to bother native speakers, or scheduling is just too much on top of their already busy lives. And good luck trying to get someone to read that story you wrote in Spanish about your favorite character in Harry Potter to get detailed feedback on how to improve your writing, because that's just another scheduling nightmare waiting to happen. So if it seems hard to learn a language, you're not crazy, because it takes a lot of work today just to get the right resources and practice partners together before you've even actually started learning anything. But it doesn't have to be that hard. This is where ChatGPT comes in to help. With the right prompt, you can get the AI to create customized language content around your specific interests. Whether that's readings about the Real Madrid soccer team or language quizzes on debating what's better between the old Star Wars versus the new Disney one, your language content should be directly customized to your specific interests to actually make the learning process fun. Other ChatGPT prompts can help you practice speaking with the AI, where you'll get zero judgment for being a beginner and can practice whenever you're free or when scheduling with people becomes a nightmare. And don't forget about prompts that will get the AI to give you feedback on your language progress, play language games with you, and even create content for your students if you're a language teacher. But how do you get ChatGPT to work well for language learning? We've already looked at the basics of how to use ChatGPT for language learning and how to speak to it directly in different languages on the channel, but there's something missing. What prompts should we use to get ChatGPT to work well? ChatGPT is notorious for going from working fantastically and being the answer to all your prayers in one moment to suddenly breaking and refusing to work because you changed one word in the prompt in another moment. Browsing the comments of my last videos, many people are excited to use ChatGPT to practice languages, but are also struggling to find the right prompts to get it to work well and give good responses. So I worked on something that I think will be quite valuable to many of you. I initially put together a free starter guide ebook with 5 ChatGPT prompts for languages, and the feedback was so positive that I chose to spend around 150 hours this past month creating, testing, and tweaking to find 100 of the best prompts that I think will genuinely help you have a fantastic and painless time learning languages faster with ChatGPT. I'll add both books in the description for anyone who's interested, but let's quickly take a look at how you can write better language prompts for yourself. Jeopardy for language learning. Let's take an example and say you're trying to turn the classic game of Jeopardy into a fun language learning session for you or a group of your language friends. A level 1 prompt might be to go to ChatGPT and say something like, "Let's play Jeopardy to practice Spanish." Prompts like this are kind of a coin toss. You're leaving it up to ChatGPT to know exactly how Jeopardy works, what categories and point values you want, and figure out all the rest of the details. It might do a good job guessing what you want, or it might not. And it's very likely that ChatGPT will respond differently the various times you run this prompt. So you might have a great session today and come back tomorrow to find out that ChatGPT is giving you a whole different type of answer and you can't get it to work like it did the other day. So this is not reliable. How can we make it better? A level 2 prompt might be something more like this. Act as a language teacher for a Spanish intermediate student B2, and let's play Jeopardy. Set up a table game board with 5 categories in column 1 and 5 point values 200, 400, 600, 800, and 1000 as the remaining 6 columns. Fill in the categories. You could go even further than this, but what we're basically doing here is defining the details. A prompt like this is usually going to be much more reliable. You can have more confidence that ChatGPT will set up the game the right way because you give it lots of details on exactly how the game works. Because Jeopardy is so common, ChatGPT already knows a lot about it, so I didn't have to explain the very basic rules, but I did give some context on things like the point values and the language difficulty to keep the vocabulary at a level that I want. This prompt is also more durable and reliable. You can trust that this prompt compared to the last one will give you a similar and good response most of the times you use it, since you're being really specific and making it hard for ChatGPT to answer wrong because it has to guess what you want because you didn't tell it. But we can take this prompt another level further. A level 3 prompt might look like this. Keep the act as a language teacher from before, and I add, after each round, update the game table. Add a plus when I get answers right and a minus for wrong answers. At the end of the game, sum all the right answers and subtract all the wrong answers for the final score. This is closer to what I consider a solid level 3 ChatGPT language learning prompt. You're explaining the rules of the activity, guiding ChatGPT to give you language content around your level, and you're telling ChatGPT all the details on not just how to start, but also how to do things like scoring along the way, which is something that it's usually bad at. A level 3 prompt like this is going to be reliable and give you consistently good answers most of the times you use it. You could go even further than this example, but I found that for this Jeopardy prompt, The level of detail we have is enough for ChatGPT to give good responses most of the times you try it. And you sometimes want to avoid giving too much text in your prompt to not confuse ChatGPT. So that sounds good for games, but what about conversation practice? Conversation corrector. Let's assume you want to have a conversation with ChatGPT where it corrects your sentences before continuing the conversation. A level 1 prompt might be like this. Let's have a conversation in English where you correct my responses before continuing the conversation. This prompt doesn't sound bad. But let's look at what happens when we test it. ChatGPT gets really weird sometimes. Sometimes it continues the conversation but forgets to correct your sentences. At times it just corrects your sentence but doesn't continue the conversation. The level of language it uses to talk to you is kind of a coin flip, so it's overall very inconsistent even if you try it and it works a few times. To get this to a level 2 prompt, specify how hard you want the vocabulary to be and give ChatGPT some structure to help it respond in a way that's useful. Here's what that might look like. Play the role of my engaging, good-natured, motivational Spanish instructor. Correct my Spanish if I make a grammatical error and explain what I said wrong. Jump straight to the explanation. After I send a message, tell me what I said wrong and correct my Spanish first. Then in the next paragraph, jump straight into continuing the conversation. Keep your answers to 50 words or less. This prompt is much more detailed without being too overkill. You're being very specific about what you want ChatGPT to do and how you want it to respond. You're being so literal that it's much harder for ChatGPT to mess up if it follows the instructions you gave it. Now, if you try this prompt, you'll notice that it works well sometimes, and other times it still makes mistakes and doesn't follow the structure. So what can you do? Well, here's what a level 3 prompt might look like. We keep the same play the role of my engaging English instructor as before, but we add this. Follow this structure every time you respond. And then we give it a sample conversation where I make some mistakes and see it correcting me, times where I don't make mistakes and it's not correcting me. And then we give it a sample conversation where we show it different things that might happen and how you want ChatGPT to respond in those cases. And we close by actually starting the conversation by saying, let's start. Hi there. This style of prompting is one way to really get ChatGPT to do some powerful language learning practice. What we did here is we gave ChatGPT a framework for answering by giving it a simulation of what the actual conversation might look like and how it should respond in different cases. I showed ChatGPT how I'm going to generally respond, I told it how it should respond, and I showed various edge cases. After getting to even this level of detail in the prompt, you might try this and notice that ChatGPT still makes mistakes in some cases. When you have this issue with a level 3 type prompt, the next thing to do is to try tweaking your wording, changing the examples, see if you can be more succinct or alternatively even more detailed. So this is when it becomes more art than science, and you just have to experiment to find the right combination that works. This is also when I would try testing between GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. GPT 4 follows instructions much better, so you might find that your level 3 prompt already works well. Now, not all prompts need to be level 3 to work. Some things are simple enough, or ChatGPT happens to have enough context, you don't need to be as descriptive for it to work well. For example, if you ask ChatGPT to give you a table of some of the most common Spanish words and their definitions, this tends to be good enough. You don't need to tell it what the column names are or how to make a table. But some other types of activities really confuse ChatGPT, so you'll need to drill in and give it specific details so it doesn't get confused. You'll just need to play around with ChatGPT to figure out whether the prompt you're trying to give it needs more details or fewer details and exactly how to form the prompt the right way. This does take some time, but it's worth it once you find some awesome prompts that make it effortless for you to practice your language. If you want to skip the time experimenting and jump straight to some vetted prompts, I spent around 150 hours creating and testing and tweaking like we just did to get 100 of the best prompts for language learning, and I published them in the book that covers prompts for beginners, for conversations, listening and speaking, language learning games like Jeopardy, Pictionary, and role-playing, prompts for language teachers, prompts for culture and language mindset, and much more. It was a painful process to get all the prompts, but hopefully this book can save you a few weeks of experimenting and give you months of language practice with the content it has. I have 2 versions of the book, the demonstrations edition in which I include visual demonstrations of every single prompt so you can follow along, and the basic version where I include just the prompts without the visual demonstrations if you prefer less guidance. I'll drop both book links in the description and would love to hear how much value you get out of them so I can continue making them better for language learners. I'll catch you in the next one, and hasta la próxima. ChatGPT is surprisingly good at Pictionary.